Appreciate you for stopping by and watching another video. Thank you in advance for liking and subscribing. It really helps us out. Make sure you check back regularly for more videos and content to be able to help you raise your standards everywhere. Sadly, the other day I hurt my back at jiu-jitsu. Because I have deep experience with back injuries, I'm going to show you guys exactly what I've done to be able to remove tension and pain from your lower back. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a doctor or a physio or anything like that. I'm just giving you my anecdotal experience of what I've learned over the last 10 years of pain management in my body. The first place you need to start is decreasing the amount of tension in specifically the quadriceps, hip flexors, and your glutes. Whenever you're rolling out on the foam roller or any of like lacrosse balls, cricket balls, anything like that, make sure you slow down over the places that give you the most amount of feedback, and feedback in this term is pain. After you've used your foam roller or the lacrosse ball or whatever you've used, do your stretches. So the first place to start whenever it comes to a lower back injury is start with your quads, hip flexors. Your quads and hip flexors give you an anterior hip tilt. This is because we spend so much time strengthening our quads, doing squats and lunges and so on and so forth. You need to spend time. Make sure you're breathing as deeply as possible using diaphragmatic breathing, because what happens when you're stretching is your body goes into fight or flight. You need to make sure that you're breathing as deeply as possible to show your body that it's okay that the stretch is happening. The best way to stretch your quads, put your knee on the floor, toes on a bench, and then squeeze your glutes so that you can push your hips forward. This is actually the second position here. This is me stretching my hip flexors, my psoas and iliacus, not just my rectus femoris, which crosses the hip and crosses the knee. Then after this, you need to make sure that you're gauging the tension. So here I am, I'm playing with different ranges of motion to see where there's pain, see where there's tension in my body, to see if I need a different torso angle or see if I need a little bit of different hip angle or anything like that. You'll see on this left side, this is the problem side. This is the one that actually aggravated my lower back and which causes me the most amount of pain. It's refusing to let go. There's so much tension built into this hip flexor, so I have to play with it a little bit to figure out where the range of motion is that I need to be working through. The next muscle group for myself is to stretch out my glutes. My glutes get ridiculously tight. Here I have to actually bridge up to be able to get my leg over to be able to start stretching my glutes properly. From there, I change sides. This one here is the problem side. My left side, I don't know what it is. I have a bit of a neurological imbalance. My cervical spine, I guess, is the thing that is controlling it, and that is the problem child. It is causing a lot of grief, and I can't actually grow my left leg the way that I need to grow my right leg. After you've decreased tension, you've been on the foam roller, you've done your stretches, each stretch about 60 seconds per stretch. You need to make sure that you're breathing while you're doing it. Move on to strengthening. So here I'm strengthening my glutes. What I'm doing is I'm doing an isometric contraction for about 90 seconds, making sure that I engage my glutes the whole time. After that, my glutes are going to be a little bit fried, they're going to be hot, they're going to be painful. I'm going to go through repetitions, making sure that I hold at the top, that I contract, and that as I'm going through the eccentric, the down phase of the range of motion, that I'm resisting the whole time. I'm not just letting my bum turned off. The next exercise I thought was going to be acceptable for me, but it put way too much load on my lumbar spine. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to change from doing the side clam plank into just a side clam. So here's where I changed into just the side clamshell. This one here, it's focusing on external rotation using the glute medial, glute max a little bit as well, but this one here, make sure you're rolling your hips forward towards your abdominals. What happens is when you lean back into it, you actually use your hip flexors to be able to raise your leg up instead, and that's just gonna jack you back up even more. So making sure that you're externally rotating, leaning forward a little bit, and this is gonna help you smash your glutes, which is gonna take tension off your lower back. The clamshell is actually an exercise that you can jam the hell out of. That's specifically what my massage therapist, Dan, he taught me. He said, just go high reps, smash the shit out of it. You can pump so many reps through this. So what I do is I push for anywhere between 10 and 20 reps depending on how it's feeling. This band here, it's a little bit light, so I pushed a little bit higher reps. After we've done glutes, we move on to abdominals, specifically the lower abdominals, because that's what happens when you get a lower cross syndrome or you get anterior hip tilt, is your lower abdominals lose the ability to hold your guts in tight. And for me, because I've had such problems with giant quads, I have to do this exercise here. This is called a thin tummy variation. So what you're doing is you're breathing all your air out and you're vacuuming your stomach in. So you're trying to roll your pelvis into a neutral place, and then it's the similar position to the bird dog here. Actually, no, this is the dead bug. Anyway, it is what it is. So the dead bug is a similar sort of position to the thin tummy. You're keeping your abs neutral, and with my head, you see my head's coming off the floor. I'm not extending through my neck. I'm actually creating thoracic, flexion. And what happens here is you're doing opposite sides, opposite movement patterns. Then we're moving into the cat camel. This one here feels a little bit sus. It contracts your back and it rounds out your lumbar spine really well, making sure that you're trying to segment each part of your spine as best as you can. You notice here it gets really, really tight for me, contracting into extension through my spine. Going into flexion, not so bad. Extension's the problem that I have. This exercise here is actually called the bird dog. Making sure when you do it that you're not shifting from hip to hip and not putting too much weight on your shoulders either. As I do it, I'm extending through my heel as I push. Each rep is held for a couple of seconds so that you can actually get the full benefit of it. Making sure that you're not rotating through your hips. That's a big piece. I can't emphasize that enough. Now we're into the next phase of strengthening through the glutes and the hamstrings. This here is called the king deadlift. So having a box that you can aim your knee at, making sure that you're doing a deadlift motion, not doing a squat motion. Notice how far my torso is leaning forward. All of my weight is sitting over my heel and I'm extending my knee through the whole range of motion here. Think of it like you're doing a Romanian deadlift at the top of the range. When you're gauging your depth, that previous box was a little bit too high and it didn't give me the full range of motion that I'm able to do. I get a little bit of trouble on my right hand side because my right glute is a little bit weaker than my left glute, which is weird because my left glute is smaller than my right, but it is what it is. And so I went to the step up boxes. I changed it so that I've got 3 of the square boxes and I've got the plank on top to be able to get the right range of motion for me here. I have been able to get this exercise down to the floor, but it is what it is. This one here, I noticed after I strengthened my glutes and I decreased the tension in my quads and stuff like that, that I noticed that my lats were firing. So the big thing here is your lats actually cross through the thoracolumbar fascia, which is located where your glutes are and your lower back. So it's all tied in together. You have movement pathways through the entire body. This is actually day 2. So day 2, I wanted to do some lopsided carries and lopsided deadlifts to be able to make sure that my core could switch on so that I could take the tension further away from my glutes and take the tension away from my quads as well. Making sure that you're doing unstable things on a unilateral basis is going to allow your core to be able to switch on properly and balance out the load. This is one of my favorite exercises. It's the banded single suitcase carry. When you're doing this, you're trying to make sure that you're holding your abdominals and your obliques on the opposite side as tight as you can. This one here, guys, men, you have to do this exercise here. It's called a frog, I believe. Basically, you're contracting your glutes like you're doing a reverse hyper. You're putting your glutes into extension. Make it a little bit harder by putting a ball between your feet. If you've got something that's a couple of kilos or some ankle weights or something, it's a phenomenal way of getting your glutes into extension as well, taking the tension off that lumbar spine. And then finally, what I finished off with was some 40 kilo staggered stance Romanian deadlifts. This was to test where my back actually was. And so after 2 days of rehab, stretching, foam rolling, so on and so forth, my body is happy and it's good to go. I'm still in pain, but it's nowhere near where it used to be. Anyway, it is what it is. Sorry for the longer video, but I want to make sure that you guys can understand just where my head's at when it comes to decreasing tension and not being a little victim. If you get hurt, if you get injured, it's not about what you can't do, it's about finding out what you can do. And what you can do is a hell of a lot more empowering and less victimized than sitting around being a little sook. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for subscribing and leaving a review. It really helps us out. Until next time, take care and much love.